Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Okay, looking to the left of your screen there, we are waiting. This is the CIA HQ in Langley, Virginia, and we're waiting to hear from President Trump. Dominic's still with me. As I was saying just before we went to that piece from Laura Bondock, is that the President coming? He will be coming.
Well, he arrived an hour ago.
Shortly, indeed. Go on.
He arrived an hour ago, according to the White House pool. His motorcade pulled into Langley, Virginia, CIA headquarters 206, so that's over an hour ago. So he's presumably been meeting with the CIA top brass.
But not the head of?
Not the head of, because he hasn't, his choice for the head of the CIA has not been appointed yet, because he's not been through nomination hearings on Capitol Hill, unlike some of the other cabinet nominee picks. Mike Pence, the Vice President, now coming up to the lectern to address the intelligence agents at CIA headquarters, Langley, Virginia.
Thank you to the Acting Director, Maroy Park. Thank you for 27 years serving the United States of America here at CIA with great distinction. It's a great privilege for me to be with you today and to have the opportunity to introduce at his first event on his first full day, the new President of the United States, Donald Trump. As you can imagine, it's deeply humbling for my family and I to find ourselves in this role. I'm grateful to our new president for the opportunity he's given me and the opportunity the American people have given us to serve. But it's especially humbling for me to be before all of you today, men and women of character who have sacrificed greatly, and to stand before this hallowed wall, this memorial wall, where we remember 117 who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. I can assure you, this new president and our entire team recognizes and appreciates the sacrifices of all of the men and women of the intelligence community of the United States of America. I've gotten to know our new president. We've traveled a lot together. When the cameras are off and the Klieg lights are off, and I'll tell you two things I know for sure. Number one, I've never met anyone more dedicated to the safety and security of the people of the United States of America, or anyone who is a greater strategic thinker about how we accomplish that for this nation. In fact, to understand the life of our new president, his whole life was strategy. He built an extraordinary success in the private sector, and I know he's going to make America safe again. And lastly, I can honestly tell you, for all my years serving in the Congress, serving as governor of my home state, traveling across the country and seeing the connection that he's made to men and women who serve and protect in every capacity in this country, I've never met anyone with a greater heart for those who every day, in diverse ways, protect the people of this nation through their character and their service and their sacrifice. And so let me say, it is my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce to all of you the President of the United States.
Well, I want to thank everybody, very, very special people. And it is true, this is my first stop, officially. We're not talking about the balls, and we're not talking about even the speeches, although they did treat me nicely on that speech yesterday. I always call them the dishonest media, but they treated me nicely. But I want to say that there is nobody that feels stronger about the intelligence community and the CIA than Donald Trump. There's nobody. And the wall behind me is very, very special. We've been touring for quite a while. And I'll tell you what, 29? I can't believe it. Oh, 28. We better reduce it. But that's amazing. And we really appreciate what you've done in terms of showing us something very special. And your whole group. These are really special, amazing people. Very, very few people could do the job you people do. And I want to just let you know, I am so behind you. And I know maybe sometimes you haven't gotten the backing that you've wanted. And you're going to get so much backing. Maybe you're going to say, please don't give us so much backing. Mr. President, please, we don't need that much backing. But you're going to have that, and I think everybody in this room knows it. You know, the military and the law enforcement, generally speaking, but all of it, but the military gave us tremendous percentages of votes. We were unbelievably successful in the election with getting the vote of the military. And probably almost everybody in this room voted for me, but I will not ask you to raise your hands if you did. But I would guarantee a big portion, because we're all on the same wavelength, folks. We're all on the same wavelength, right? Who knows? Took Brian about 30 seconds to figure that one out, right? Because we know we're on the same wavelength. But we're going to do great things. We're going to do great things. We've been fighting these wars for longer than any wars we've ever fought. We have not used the real abilities that we have. We've been restrained. We have to get rid of ISIS. We have to get rid of ISIS. We have no choice. Radical Islamic terrorism, and I said it yesterday, has to be eradicated just off the face of the earth. This is evil. This is evil. And, you know, I can understand the other side. We can all understand the other side. There can be wars between countries. There can be wars. You can understand what happened. This is something nobody can even understand. This is a level of evil that we haven't seen. And you're going to go to it, and you're going to do a phenomenal job, but we're going to end it. It's time. It's time right now to end it. You have somebody coming on who is extraordinary. You know, for the different positions of secretary of this and secretary of that and all of these great positions, I'd see 5, 6, 7, 8 people. And we had a great transition. We had an amazing team of talent. And by the way, General Flynn is right over here. Put up your hand, Mike. What a good guy. And Reince and my whole group. Reince, you know, right? They don't care about Reince. He's like this political guy that turned out to be a superstar, right? We don't have to talk about Reince. But we did. We had just such a tremendous, tremendous success. So when I'm interviewing all of these candidates that Reince and his whole group is putting in front, it went very, very quickly. And in this case, went so quickly because I would see 6 or 7 or 8 for Secretary of Agriculture, who we just named the other day, Sonny Perdue, former governor of Georgia, fantastic guy. But I'd see 6, 7, 8 people for a certain position. Everybody wanted it. But I met Mike Pompeo, and it was the only guy I met. I didn't want to meet anybody else. I said, cancel everybody else. Cancel. Now, he was approved essentially, but they're doing little political games with me. You know, he was one of the 3. Now, last night, as you know, General Mattis, fantastic guy, and General Kelly got approved. And Mike Pompeo was supposed to be in that group. It was going to be the three of them. Can you imagine all of these guys? People respect, they respect that military sense. All my political people, they're not doing so well. The political people aren't doing so well, but you. We're going to get them all through, but some will take a little bit longer than others. But Mike was literally, I had a group of we have 9 different people. Now, I must say, I didn't mind canceling 8 appointments. That wasn't the worst thing in the world. But I met him, and I said, he is so good. #1 in his class at West Point. Now, I know a lot about West Point. And to be 1 year, I'm a person that very strongly believes in academics. In fact, every time I say I had an uncle who was a great professor at MIT for 35 years, who did a fantastic job in so many different ways academically. He was an academic genius. And then they say, there's Donald Trump, an intellectual. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. And I recognized immediately. So he was #1 at West Point. And he was also essentially #1 at Harvard Law School. And then he decided to go into the military. And he ran for Congress. And everything he's done has been a home run. People like him, but much more importantly to me, everybody respects him. And when I told Paul Ryan that I want to do this, I would say he may be the only person that was not totally thrilled, right, Mike? Because he said, I don't want to lose this guy. But you will be getting a total star. You're going to be getting a total gem. This is a gem. And I just... You'll see. You'll see. And many of you know him anyway, but you're going to see. And again, we have some great people going in, but this one is something going to be very special because this is one, if I had to name the most important, this would certainly be perhaps, in certain ways you could say my most important. You do the job like everybody in this room is capable of doing. There can be, and the generals are wonderful, and the fighting is wonderful, but if you give them the right direction, boy, does the fighting become easier. And boy, do we lose so fewer lives and win so quickly. And that's what we have to do. We have to start winning again. When I was young, and when I was, of course, I feel young. I feel like I'm 30, 35, 39. Somebody said, are you young? I said, I think I'm young. I was stopping when we were in the final month of that campaign, 4 stops, 5 stops, 7 stops, speeches in front of 25, 30,000 people, 15,000, 19,000 from stop to stop. I feel young. But when I was young, and I think we're all sort of young, when I was young, we were always winning things in this country. We'd win with trade. We'd win with wars. At a certain age, I remember hearing from one of my instructors, the United States has never lost a war. And then after that, it's like, we haven't won anything. We don't win anymore. The old expression, to the victor belong the spoils. You remember I always used to say, keep the oil. I wasn't a fan of Iraq. I didn't want to go into Iraq. But I will tell you, when we were in, we got out wrong. And I always said, in addition to that, keep the oil. Now, I said it for economic reasons. But if you think about it, Mike, if we kept the oil, you probably wouldn't have ISIS because that's where they made their money in the first place. So we should have kept the oil. But, okay. Maybe you'll have another chance. But the fact is, we should have kept the oil. I believe that this group is going to be one of the most important groups in this country toward making us winners again, toward ending all of the problems. We have so many problems that are interrelated that we don't even think of, but interrelated to the kind of havoc and fear that this sick group of people has caused. So I can only say that I am with you 1,000%. And the reason you're my first stop is that, as you know, I have a running war with the media. They are among the most dishonest human beings on earth. Right? And they sort of made it sound like I had a feud with the intelligence community. And I just want to let you know, the reason you're number one stop, it is exactly the opposite, exactly. And they understand that too. And I was explaining about the numbers. We did a thing yesterday, the speech. Did everybody like the speech? You had to like it. Right? So I've been given good reasons. But we had a massive field of people. You saw that, packed. I get up this morning, I turn on one of the networks, and they show an empty field. I said, wait a minute. I made a speech. I looked out. The field was, it looked like 1.5 million people. They showed a field where there were practically nobody standing there. And they said, Donald Trump did not draw well. I said, it was almost raining. The rain should have scared him away, but God looked down and he said, we're not going to let it rain on your speech. In fact, when I first started, I said, oh no. First line, I got hit by a couple of drops. And I said, oh, this is too bad, but we'll go right through it. But the truth is that it stopped immediately. It was amazing. And then it became really sunny. Then I walked off and it poured right after I left. It poured. But you know, we have something that's amazing because we had, honestly, it looked like 1.5 million people, whatever it was. But it went all the way back to the Washington Monument. And I turn on the thing, and by mistake, I get this network. And it showed an empty field. And it said we drew 250,000 people. Now, that's not bad, but it's a lie. We had 250,000 people literally around, you know, in the little bowl that we constructed. That was 250,000 people. The rest of the, 20-block area all the way back to the Washington Monument was packed. So we caught them, and we caught them in a beauty. And I think they're going to pay a big price. We had another one yesterday, which was interesting. In the Oval Office, there's a beautiful statue of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I also happen to like Churchill, Winston Churchill. I think most of us like Churchill. Doesn't come from our country, but had a lot to do with it, helped us, real ally. And as you know, Churchill's statue was taken out, the bust. And as you also probably have read, the Prime Minister is coming over to our country very shortly, and they wanted to know whether or not I'd like it back. I'd say absolutely, but in the meantime, we have a bust of Churchill. So a reporter for Time magazine, and I have been on their cover like 14 or 15 times. I think we have the all-time record in the history of Time magazine. Like if Tom Brady's on the cover, it's one time because he won the Super Bowl or something, right? I've been on for 15 times this year. I don't think that's a record, Mike, that can never be broken. Do you agree with that? What do you think? But I will say that they said, it was very interesting, that Donald Trump took down the bust, the statue of Dr. Martin Luther King, and it was right there. But there was a cameraman that was in front of it. So Zeke from Time magazine writes a story about, I took down, I would never do that because I had great respect for Dr. Martin Luther King. But this is how dishonest the media is. Now, big story, the retraction was like where? Well, was it a line, or do they even bother putting it in? So I only like to say that because I love honesty. I like honest reporting. I will tell you, final time, although I will say it when you let in your thousands of other people that have been trying to come in, because I am coming back, we may have to get you a larger room. We may have to get you a larger room. You know? And maybe it'll be built by somebody that knows how to build, and we won't have columns. Do you understand that? We get rid of the columns. But no, I just wanted to really say that I love you. I respect you. There's nobody I respect more. You're going to do a fantastic job, and we're going to start winning again, and you're going to be leading the charge. So thank you all very much. Thank you, beautiful. Thank you all very much. Have a good time. I'll be back. I'll be back. Thank you.
Finishing with a line from Arnie at the end there saying, "I'll be back." Our diplomatic editor, Dominic Madhorn, is here with us. He had the opportunity to speak to a lot of the CIA staff here at Langley, their headquarters. Gave a bit of a plug, not least for the new man who'll be in charge as soon as he's sworn in. But took the opportunity to talk again about the inauguration yesterday. Crowds thinning out now here, as you can see, in Washington, and telling us that it was very sunny during his speech, and also that probably about 1.5 million people were turned up for the inauguration.
It was gobsmacking stuff. I mean, he ended up by saying that he hates lies, he hates the dishonest media. This is a man who began his political career peddling the well-established falsehood that Barack Obama wasn't born in the United States. He was a leader of the birther movement, this claim that Barack Obama wasn't born in the United States and therefore had no right to be President of America. His campaign was riddled with lies, self-evident falsehoods, fabrications and contradictions, and now he's gone to the CIA, an organisation which the root of and the fundamental mission of the CIA is to establish the truth and find information that is so truthful and accurate it can be relied upon by the president, and said that he hated liars and blamed the media for lying about the inauguration yesterday. Said that I think he said that the sun shone on his inauguration.
Very sunny,
and,
he said.
As you said, 1.5 million people, and he's already tweeted that the crowd stretched down to the Washington Monument, which they didn't. He then kind of sold the idea of Mike Pompeo as a CIA director, who's not yet been approved by nomination hearings on Capitol Hill, rather like he might sort of pitch someone he's appointing as a new manager for one of his casinos, and then said that he had absolute faith in him and in the CIA and the intelligence community, and that's a community he has had an unprecedented feud with ahead of his inauguration, because he has questioned their version of events in terms of the way Russians allegedly hacked Democrat computers during the election campaign, helping his election. During that feud, he seemed to undermine the intelligence community by taking the side of Russia's leader, Vladimir Putin, and he was condemned by both John Brennan, the outgoing CIA director, and also James Clapper, the director of national intelligence, who both said that his criticisms and his feud with the intelligence community had undermined morale, and it wasn't helpful for him to disparage the intelligence community. So he's got a lot of making up to do with
But
him.
he had talked about it being reminiscent of Nazi Germany, some of the actions that had been taking place at that time. Now, today, he's saying, actually, that wasn't me, that was the dishonest media.
Yes, I mean, but it's well established that he referred to the activity of the CIA or the intelligence community as being reminiscent of Nazi Germany. He said it on camera. It's well documented. I think that room was full of people who are supporters, and he clearly has a lot of support amongst parts of the intelligence community. Someone else, though, who wouldn't be named, but said to Reuters agency, many people who worked for the CIA, an intelligence operative, said many people are asking whether we can serve under a president, a national security advisor, who's expressed such contempt for the intelligence community. And one photo opportunity drive-by on a Saturday is not going to change that. So I think that gives a sense of the reservations other people in the CIA have about this president, and the challenge he faces in patching up relations with them, and also public confidence in him as a commander-in-chief and somebody who the intelligence community will be answerable to.
Okay, so this is the Mal. This is what was happening while he is at CIA HQ, Langley in Virginia. And he was making the comparisons, although he didn't mention what was happening today directly, making comparisons with the number of people who turned out today as opposed to the numbers that had turned out yesterday for his inauguration. These are people, mostly women. There were some men and some children here as well today, who are taking great exception to some of the comments made by President Trump when he was president-elect, not least talking about women or comparing women to pigs and dogs, and fat-shaming a former beauty queen.
Yes, and that was well documented during the campaign, what he said about a number of women, and particularly those comments which were recorded secretly on the tape that Access Hollywood then revealed, him referring to women and what he did with women in obscene language. And the reference to that were the pussy-eared caps that the women have been women and other protesters have been wearing today, expressing their disgust for the way he's referred to women and treated women during the campaign and during his career.
I have a panel sitting here, and we're going to talk through exactly what we just heard there at CIA from the president here. Jim Sciutto, I'm just going to, out of the gate, start with you as you perfectly explained to the viewers the significance of where he was standing in Langley, the 117 stars of the live law serving his country. What did you just hear?
Listen, that is hallowed ground at the CIA. Those stars represent men and women killed in the service of their country. Those are the words that are over those stars behind President Trump's head there. One of them is for Johnny Michael Spann. He was the first American killed in Afghanistan after the invasion, after 9/11. The first words out of Donald Trump's mouth in that hallowed spot, I'm not saying it's the equivalent of the tomb of the unknown soldier, but for the CIA, in effect, it is, right?
Sure
These are unknown, faceless individuals who gave their lives for the country. The first comment from the president's mouth there was about favorable Fox News coverage. Then he went on for a moment to say, no one backs you more than me. But then, and I think my colleagues and I were making a running list of the dozen other topics he mentioned there, beyond Fox News coverage. I mean, the Zeke Miller thing about the MLK statue, General Michael Flynn, Reince Priebus, the size of the crowd yesterday. He did eventually circle back and again say, I'm 1,000% behind you. I mean, the truth is, all you needed to hear there was, I'm coming here because of the great sacrifice you made. I'm standing in front of these stars here, which is a representation of that sacrifice. I'm behind you, and I appreciate the work. There were about 1,000 other things in there, and I'll just speak from this point. As a journalist who's covered the intelligence community for a long time, I'm just amazed at that kind of commentary from the president in that spot at this time. But let me just tell you, it's not my place. Let me tell you what folks inside the community, I imagine, because there were 200 folks there from the CIA who volunteered to come today. They weren't required to. It's a day off. They volunteered to come today because the president is coming to speak. You know, what do they want to hear? They certainly want to hear support. They want to hear that they're not seen as a political body, as the president in his own public comments has accused them of being. They heard some perfunctory comments in that direction. Was it an expression of support from the folks I talked to in the intelligence community? I got to say, it wasn't what they were, I imagine, expecting or hoping to hear from him.
It was a campaign rally, and that's not what you expect at the CIA. And I think the president's staff knew that he had a lot of ground to make up because of the problems he has had with the CIA, tweeting negatively about them, comparing them to Nazi Germany, questioning intelligence, questioning whether the DNC was hacked by the Russians, and on and on and on. He did say today, to give him his due, he did say, I'm with you 1,000%. I want you to know that. He went on and on about his nominee, Pompeo, and maybe that gave people there an awful lot of reassurance that finally the president was going to be on board with the information they worked so hard to deliver. But when he goes off on these tangents about himself and about the size of his crowds and the Martin Luther King
There were many
statue,
more words about the size of his crowd than about his support for the CIA.
And when he conflates the military with the CIA, he said the military gave us a tremendous percentage of votes. We're all on the same wavelength. Well, these folks are not part of the military.
Right.
And so I think that there may be some people there scratching their heads asking, why did you come here? Because politically it was the right thing to do and your staff told you to do it, or because it is what you believe about us?
When he said that the media was the most dishonest people in the world, you forgot that, so I'm just going to add that for you, Gloria, because I know we jotted the same line at the same time, saying that it was the media that made up the feud between Trump and the CIA, but we know, forgive me, damn well, that he pushed back, on the CIA reports, on what they came, the conclusions they came to on Russia and hacking.
You referred to it repeatedly in tweets as intelligence in quotes.
Exactly.
He was undermining this.
Multiple times.
Yes.
Look, we, the media, are a very easy target. That is not going to change. It has been so since the beginning of this republic and probably since the beginning of time in the free world. But and so, you know, he can say what he wants. It's unfortunate that he said that there on hallowed ground. It happens to be not true that we conflated things that he said. All you have to go do is look at his Twitter feed to see what he said, putting intelligence in quotes, saying at his own press conference that the way that he thinks that they acted is like Nazi Germany. That's not us. Those are his words. Let's just put that aside for a second, though. I know that during the end of the campaign, when Donald Trump now President Trump, then candidate Trump, was most successful, it was because he had people around him saying, if you tweet X, Y, or Z, or if you go off script, then it is going to take away from the message that you want to get out. He needs to understand, and maybe it's going to be a learning curve, that is still the case, even more so when you're president of the United States. You said, look, we've all been in this town a long time, and even if you're just doing public relations 101, it's, you know what? I'm so happy that you came here on a Saturday. I'm here on a Saturday, my very first full day in office, to say thank you. I support your work.
For you.
You know, this is you. I'm going to be your leader, so on and so forth. And that's it. And anything else he says, whether it's about him or his crowd side, anything takes away from that message.
Andre Bauer, hang on, gotta go. I mean, Trump was, you supported him throughout. He's now the president. How do you defend what we just saw?
Last night, Donald Trump danced to I Did It My Way. We in the media, I guess I'm part of it now, have an expectation level of what people that have worked their way up through elective office and have become president, and they carry themselves a certain way. Donald Trump's a businessman. He has raw skills. He's been able to connect with the voters, and he's not worried about appealing to what we perceive to be presidential. He's a different breed. There's no question. Is it what all of us would want, whether it's even his staff? No, but he's going to do it his way, and it's not always going to come off the way we want it to, but he's connecting. I'm getting texts right now from Johnny Lunchbucket out there is what I like to call them, people, the real people that aren't politicians, and they feel like somebody actually talks their language and doesn't have flowery speeches. They want results, and that's what they care about, and the rest of the stuff
push back on you, and I'm listening to Shudo very carefully talking about the hallowed ground and where he stood. And yes, he acknowledged the 117 stars behind him, and I don't think you have to be a politician to have grace. And
no question.
Was what he did appropriate? The zigzagging, instead of talking about you, the people.
You know, from being a guy that was in elected office, he has the ability to get a lot more hits than he's getting. He could have a direct message. Maybe he needs to look at teleprompter if he really wants to get that message, but maybe he just wants to stay scrappy. You know, maybe he thinks his message is more effective when he talks off the cuff and people can relate to him that aren't out inside this beltway.
Can I just pipe in? Because
sure.
you gave this impression that it's the media that calls this hallowed ground and that somehow that's...
No, I didn't mean to anyway touch on the hallowed ground.
Well, then let me just quote from, because as you've been getting messages, I've been getting messages because I speak to a lot of folks in the intelligence community. It is, exclamation point, hallowed ground. It is your place to call it out. We intelligence professionals are apolitical and quiet. You have to call it like it is. So I just want to take away, that may not have been what you've been implying, but you'll often hear that message, well, it's the East Coast elites or the media who has these expectations. I can tell you honestly, because I talked to a lot of folks who risk their lives in the line of duty in intelligence, and they have that expectation as well. This is, and I'm hearing it now, probably much as you are. What?
Yeah, I come from a family that was at an FBI Academy. My grandfather was an admiral, buried right here at Arlington. So I mean, I get it. So I don't mean to overstep their hallowed ground. I just meant as an overall. Donald Trump's whole approach, I don't think he's going to conform anytime soon.
So I think there's a difference between Donald Trump keeping it real or 100, as if I think boiling down what Andre is saying, and then Donald Trump respecting where he is, understanding the moment, and then speaking to that moment. He seemed not well up there on that stage. He was rambling. I thought it was petty, childish. He seemed very insecure, and that's going to get us sent into war. That is going to really upset some of the markets. Like, Donald Trump has to understand that he is now the president of everybody. He just can't stand up there and give campaign speeches for the next 4 years. He's the president of all folks, and he needs to act like it. I was totally turned off as a real person, because I also think we talk about real people all the time, and I am one of those real people. I just didn't vote for Donald Trump. I was turned off by what he said.
David Drucker?
Look, it's clear that he went there to repair his relationship with the intelligence community, because he has been beating up on them. And now that he's president, their victories are his victories, and their failures are his failures, as well as the country's. And I think that he and his team understand that he now needs them in order for him to be successful on national security. However, I think there's one thing we should understand. He did get the majority of the vote of members of the military who voted. He was very popular in the opinion polls taken during the campaign. There has been a large belief among many members of the national security community and many members of the military that the administration that just left was not doing a good job of utilizing them and their talents. They were upset with many of the policies, and they welcome this change in leadership. They welcome a General Mattis, somebody that they feel is going to do a better job utilizing the tools that we have and when they put their lives in danger, having better outcomes. And so I think we need to understand both sides of this. And they may be more willing to put up with some of Donald Trump, President Trump's antics, their new commander-in-chief's antics, if they feel like him and his advisors are getting the job done better.
Well, if he had said that, you know, and he did partly say, I'm going to be behind you 1,000%. We're going to let you do your job better. We're on the same wavelength and all the rest. But there is this pattern where every discussion takes a circle and winds up with Donald Trump, whether it's Donald Trump's crowds or whether how the media is rigged and made a mistake or whatever. This was a solemn moment. He was trying to make amends to a community that's been worried about him, that he needs. And that was a smart thing to do, going there today, very smart. But somehow it wound up to the size of his crowds at the inaugural.
Right, and I think a lot of this will depend on how successful he is as president. If there are no attacks, if our strategy in combating ISIS works, then I think that they'll be willing to put up with some of this stuff. Sure. Otherwise, it'll wear thin.
Let me just jump in, Kate, and just quickly ask you, because you've written books on first families, and this is, the first full day for President Trump. Have we ever seen a president of the CIA on day one?
I don't think so. I know we've certainly never seen anything like we're seeing today with the protests. And one thing I would add is, as a president, you have to have a pretty thick skin. I mean, if you look at what happened to LBJ and to President Nixon, the Vietnam protests in Lafayette Square, and you can hear these protests in the White House, and they heard them, Lady Bird Johnson and her daughters talk about what this is like to live in the White House and to know that a good deal of the public is against a lot of your policies. And I don't think this is the end of people disagreeing with Donald Trump. And so you really have to have a thick skin, and I think some of this insecurity is coming out.
Good evening. Thank you guys for coming. I know our first official press briefing is going to be on Monday, but I wanted to give you a few updates on the president's activities. But before I get to the news of the day, I think I'd like to discuss a little bit of the coverage of the past 24 hours. Yesterday, at a time when our nation and the world was watching the peaceful transition of power, and as the president said, the transition and the balance of power from Washington to the citizens of the United States, some members of the media were engaged in deliberately false reporting. For all the talk about the proper use of Twitter, two instances yesterday stand out. One was a particularly egregious example in which a reporter falsely tweeted out that the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. had been removed from the Oval Office. After it was pointed out that this was just plain wrong, the reporter casually reported and tweeted out and tried to claim that a Secret Service agent must have just been standing in front of it. This was irresponsible and reckless. Secondly, photographs of the inaugural proceedings were intentionally framed in a way, in one particular tweet, to minimize the enormous support that had gathered on the National Mall. This was the first time in our nation's history that floor coverings have been used to protect the grass in the mall. That had the effect of highlighting any areas where people were not standing, while in years past, the grass eliminated this visual. This was also the first time that fencing and magnetometers went as far back on the wall, preventing hundreds of thousands of people from being able to access the mall as quickly as they had in inaugurations past. Inaccurate numbers involving crowd size were also tweeted. No one had numbers because the National Park Service, which controls the National Mall, does not put any out. By the way, this applies to any attempts to try to count the number of protesters today in the same fashion. We do know a few things, so let's go through the facts. We know that from the platform where the president was sworn in to 4th Street holds about 250,000 people. From 4th Street to the media tent is about another 220,000. And from the media tent to the Washington Monument, another 250,000 people. All of this space was full when the president took the oath of office. We know that 420,000 people used the D.C. Metro public transit yesterday, which actually compares to 317,000 that used it for President Obama's last inaugural. This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period. both in person and around the globe. Even the New York Times printed a photograph showing that a misrepresentation of the crowd in the original tweet in their paper, which showed the full extent of the support, depth, and crowd and intensity that existed. These attempts to lessen the enthusiasm of the inauguration are shameful and wrong. The president was also at the Central, as you know, the president was at the Central Intelligence Agency today and greeted by a raucous, overflow crowd of some 400 plus CIA employees. There were over 1,000 requests to attend, prompting the president to note that he'll have to come back to greet the rest. The employees were ecstatic that he's the new commander-in-chief, and he delivered them a powerful and important message. He told them he has their back, and they were grateful for that. They gave him a 5-minute standing ovation at the end in a display of their patriotism and their enthusiasm for his presidency. I'd also note that it's a shame that the CIA didn't have a CIA director to be with him today when he visited, because the Democrats have chosen, Senate Democrats are stalling the nomination of Mike Pompeo and playing politics with national security. That's what you guys should be writing and covering. That this, instead of sowing division about tweets and false narratives. The president is committed to unifying our country, and that was the focus of his inaugural address. This kind of dishonesty in the media, the challenging that bringing about our nation together is making it more difficult. There's been a lot of talk in the media about the responsibility to hold Donald Trump accountable. And I'm here to tell you that it goes two ways. We're going to hold the press accountable as well. The American people deserve better, and as long as he serves as the messenger for this incredible movement, he will take his message directly to the American people, where his focus will always be. And with that, a few other updates from the day. The president had a constructive conversation with Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada about strengthening the relationship between our two nations. They also discussed setting up additional meetings in the days to come, which we will follow up on. He also spoke to Prime Minister Peña Nieto of Mexico and talked about a visit on trade, immigration, and security that will occur on the 31st. The president will welcome his first foreign leader this Thursday, when the United Kingdom's Theresa May will come to Washington on Friday. On tomorrow, the president will oversee his assistants to the president being sworn in. He will then, the staff will then have an ethics briefing and be a briefing on the proper use and handling of classified information. Further updates as far as what he will do. Oh, and then in the evening, he will have a reception for law enforcement and first responders that helped support the inauguration. Thank you guys for being here tonight. I will see you on Monday.
Sean, Women's March.
How about the
Obama campaign? Women's March bigger than Trump's inaugural? It was the largest audience ever.
Thanks for joining us on Sunrise today. With a start with America's new president continuing his attacks on the world's media, blaming them for fabricating a feud between him and US intelligence agencies. He made the comments during an appearance during a visit to CIA headquarters. His press secretary then followed it up with an angry statement of his own without taking any questions from reporters.
But the president did offer an olive branch to the intelligence services and said he'll meet Theresa May in the White House in just 5 days' time, the first with a foreign leader following Mr. Trump's inauguration. All this was after millions of people around the world took to the streets to protest against him. From Washington, our US correspondent Greg Milam reports.
It is telling that having finished with his inauguration formalities, Donald Trump went to make peace with the intelligence community, and at CIA HQ blamed the media for inventing talk of a rift.
So I can only say that I am with you 1,000%. And the reason you're my first stop is that, as you know, I have a running war with the media. They are among the most dishonest human beings on earth. What? And they sort of made it sound like I had a feud with the intelligence community. And I just want to let you know, the reason you're number one stop, it is exactly the opposite. Exactly. And they understand that too. I love you. I respect you. There's nobody I respect more. You're going to do a fantastic job. and we're going to start winning again, and you're going to be leading the charge. So thank you all very much. Thank you, beautiful. Thank you.
He also criticized the media for suggesting the crowd at his inauguration was small.
Honestly, it looked like 1.5 million people, whatever it was. But it went all the way back to the Washington Monument. And I turn on, and by mistake, I get this network. And it showed an empty field. And it said we drew 250,000 people. Now, that's not bad, but it's a lie.
His new spokesman followed up in combative style.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period. These attempts to lessen the enthusiasm of the inauguration are shameful and wrong.
Welcome to Trump world. His family have been getting used to the White House, tweeting video from the presidential bowling alley. And from the window of his motorcade, Donald Trump will have seen some of the thousands in Washington to protest his presidency. Theresa May will make this journey to the White House this week. Donald Trump has the job of healing the divisions in America. Greg Milam, Sky News, Washington.
Well, millions of people have taken to the streets across the United States and the rest of the world in protest against the new president. More than 500,000 women demonstrated in a march on Washington, more than attended the inauguration on Friday. The massive turnout forced organisers to change plans for a formal march on the White House after the route became blocked with too many people.
Well, sister marches took place across the US, including in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago and Atlanta. In New York, 250,000 people took to the streets in protest.
Los Angeles also saw a large turnout with hundreds of thousands of people flocking into downtown LA. Messages on signs included "The future is female" and "Love, less fear, more love." Now let's bring you more on what has proved to be a pretty busy weekend for Donald Trump. Let's talk to Republican political and public affairs consultant Matt Klink, who joins us live from Los Angeles. Very good morning to you, Matt. Look, first and foremost, what do you make of what's happened in the last 12 hours or so with Donald Trump still really coming out on the attack against the media in the States and worldwide?
Well, the news media is the low-hanging fruit for Donald Trump. He's made great hay of attacking them throughout his campaign, and I don't expect him to stop doing that now that he's president. In the States, the media's popularity is incredibly low. There's been a lot of criticism about alleged fake news and real fake news, not even alleged fake news, and some of which Mr. Trump has blamed some of the more mainstream media organizations for trading in that news. So what was interesting was he made those statements today at the Central Intelligence Agency, and he got a very loud applause from the CIA personnel when he talked about it, which is, I find, a little bit disturbing. More of the same from President Trump.
I mean, it makes it very difficult to read, doesn't it, as outsiders, in that, you know, if the CIA is backing him to the hilt, I mean, which they have to do to an extent as president, but I mean, we haven't been misled, have we, up until this point?
Well, it depends on what you mean in terms of misled. I think what he was directly criticizing the media for was trying to create a divide between the Central Intelligence Agency and our Director of National Security with President-elect Trump at the time. And he went there to try to soothe over any ill feelings between the staff at the CIA. And he said that it was all a creation of the media. Now, truth be told, as I'm sure your viewers are aware, if you've heard any of his statements, Mr. Trump did make some fairly caustic statements toward the heads of the CIA and other intelligence agencies in the United States. And that was just the media reporting what he said. So, again, he's trying to point fingers and distract attention a little bit.
And what about his press secretary giving that first briefing to journalists at the White House, saying this was the most attended, the biggest attendance at an inauguration ever, period, no questions?
Well, yeah, I think that they may need to look at the satellite images again, because Barack Obama in 2008 had upwards of 1.8 million people. Trump probably had, I think he may have had 1 million. I don't know what the numbers were, but just the tone by Sean Spicer, who is Mr. Trump's press secretary, or President Trump's press secretary, it was very aggressive. It was very in your face to the news media. And I think what I take it, this is a signal from the Trump administration that it's going to be a new day in working with the media in Washington, and that if they don't mind their P's and Q's, he'll use his 20+ million Twitter followers and he'll just go around them.
It is going to prove to be difficult. I mean, obviously, this conflict with the media, which let's be honest, which he is maintaining now. But also, I mean, the women's marches that we saw yesterday across the states and across the world, that's got to send a big message. Can't imagine it's one he's going to take a lot of notice of, though.
Well, one would hope, right? I mean, there were upwards of 2.9 million people that marched all throughout the United States, and I don't know what the number is throughout the rest of the world. And while the number of issues that they discussed was very diverse, from reproductive rights to LGBTQ rights to immigration to support for climate change, they were united in one thing, that they do not support Mr. Trump. And when I don't know that these people ever voted for him when he ran against Hillary Clinton, but it certainly shows that America is a divided country right now, and that Mr. Trump needs to do a better job of trying to unite people rather than divide people, which certainly you did not hear in his inaugural address on Friday.
Matt Klink, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I've been getting away with it all